Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Voyager, Fearless in Love, out July 14th on Season of Mist. The album has 11 tracks, 45 minutes in length, and this is the band's 8th full-length studio album. They are an Australian progressive rock metal band. This album, from a design point of view, it definitely holds a certain beauty to it. And the beauty is the ability to create an album that on one hand is very diverse, and on the other hand is very cohesive. This ability to merge these two different worlds into one single album and allowing them to coexist almost in a seamless way gives a lot of playability, energy, and quality, not just to the individual songs, but to the overall experience of going from first to last. Now, it's easy for the listener to detect the differences from track to track and to detect the variety of sounds, of atmospheres, of influences that this album offers. It was a little bit harder for me to detect the commonality that brings all of them together. The more I listened to this record, the more I realized that that commonality is coming from the synths. They're there on every single song, but they're there in different ways, in different shapes, in different forms, with different outcomes. And because of that, they become a little bit more predominant in some tracks and a little bit less predominant on others. The fact that there is variation from song to song allows that element that's common across all 11 songs to not be in the forefront all the time. And because it's not in the forefront all the time, and it gives room to other elements like the guitars, for example, or the vocals to push themselves into a more predominant role, you almost forget that they're within certain songs. This ability to hide what commonality exists across each and every single song allows the diverse side of the album to speak a little bit louder, but still allows the subconscious mind of the listener to connect the dots and see the cohesiveness of the record. This is the beauty of the design, because it's a design that's intertwined with the sound experience and the soundscape. Can't talk about one without talking about the other. This is kind of the story of the chicken and the egg. You're not quite sure which one came first, but the two depend on one another. And those synths, those keyboards, are a key fundamental part of what drives this album. The beauty and variation definitely adds quality, but the overall impact that they offer also has a design in terms of what the influences are all about. Either be a little bit more of a pop experience, 80s experience, new wave, industrial, all of these are there. This record has a very unique, perhaps, definition of what progressive rock metal should be all about. I think it's a definition of the band. This album is a representation of their style, of their sound, of their uniquenesses. And then you can put that under prog, because that's exactly what prog is. A representation of the uniquenesses of the band, not necessarily following a pattern that belongs to a genre, but rather a pattern that belongs to a band. This record definitely offers that in the overall sound. A sound that also has great production behind it. That production allows you at times to discover all the different elements and all the different texture, but offering it in a very simplified manner. This is not a complicated album to listen to. This is not an album that makes you feel silly, that makes you feel like you're not prepared enough to listen to it, or maybe not even intelligent enough to listen to it. This album dumbs things down with its simplicity of elements and overall construction so that you can enjoy every single part of this record and feel connected with the experience, sung in and sung out. Great production for an album like this, an album that hides all of the work that went to it, an album that hides all the complexity that this album has and makes the experience for the listener to be a little bit more linear, a little bit more smooth, even though there's nothing linear about this record. Now, the sound is not just synths. There's guitars, there's drums, there's bass, and you're going to hear all of these elements. They all have different roles, they all have different importances. I actually thought that the guitars were perhaps the second most important element on this album behind the synths. The guitars on this record have great impact. First of all, there's great solos on this album. That gives that rock metal feel that you're looking for. But that doesn't end there. There's certain songs on this record that have quite a bit of a bite. They have quite a bit of heaviness. They're thick, they're chunky, and there's definitely a sense of volume in those songs. Those are the ones that you feel more connected to the guitars, and those synths move into a secondary role, allowing you to disconnect from that commonality. This is important in the individuality of the songs, but then you see that importance also in the overall design of the record, because these songs are spread out throughout the experience of this record, and they're not all bunched up together at the top or at the bottom. The drums on this album is maybe the weakest spot that the record offers. Not that the sound of the drums or the execution, I should say, it's not good. I just felt that the production behind the drums could have been a little bit better. Sometimes in that idea of oversimplifying the elements, the drums came across a little bit empty, with not enough oomph at times, with not enough soul, with not enough impact. The sound of the drums felt a little bit thin in certain songs. I'm not saying that they had to be strong, I'm not saying that they had to be powerful, because that's not the style of this record, but I honestly felt like the drums could have a little bit more depth to their execution into the overall outcome. And when you consider how thin they are throughout the entire album, it almost lacks a little bit of that backbone that's so important coming from the drum sound on any record. Vocally, the album is amazing. Great range, great delivery, sparkling in some harsh vocals here and there that adds a little bit of an extra spice, an extra vibe, and complements really well the incredible vocal performance that this album will offer. The tonality is great, but the emotion, or the energy, I should say, that comes with that delivery, with that tonality, really raises the bar on this album. And this is a record that sound-wise, it feels very connected to the 80s. It has a huge 80s presence. It doesn't matter how you dice it or slice it. And the vocals come across in that same fashion, almost a throwback to bands like Spandau Ballet, or, any of the big ones, Simple Minds at times as well. All of those big bands of the 80s that had a definite impact, more so in the pop rock genres than metal or heavy rock. But the vocals have a great delivery, a great tonality, really understanding how you can work with words and changing that tonality and that delivery ever so slightly in order for you to create ebbs and flows as much vocally as they exist already musically. All around, I have to say, this is an incredibly strong album from front to back, and it's a fun album to listen to. This is the fun record of the summer of 2023, or you can call it the summer album of 2023. This record has all of those elements. It has some deeper songs, it has some brighter songs, and it has some in between. There's a little bit of everything for everybody, but it's definitely the summer record of this year. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Ultraviolet. Very atmospheric opening, and the synths really help define what that atmosphere is all about. Then bringing in a classic electric guitar sound, almost something out of Dire Straits or Pink Floyd, along those lines, adds a different vibe to how this song is coming across. I mean, this is Ultraviolet. That kind of guitar sound definitely offers a slight psychedelic element to how the song progresses and how the song feels. Using of the bass on this track and allowing the bass to pop, it's really important as well, because it offers a little bit more depth, and that depth is needed in order to better ground the track. This creates a wave of sound, or I should say a new wave of sound, because it brings a lot of those elements into the forefront. Also adding some industrial elements, not just on the sound, but also on the vocals, offers a more dynamic approach, and it gives a lot more life musically and vocally to how this track comes across. Super fluid on the vocals, infusing some harsh vocals on this track adds a great touch. It makes the song feel even more dynamic, but it's a great track from a soundscape point of view, and also how the vocals integrate that same sound and emphasize all the nuances of the sound perfectly from start to end. Next you have Dreamer. The synths really pop on this song. It's undeniable. And then when you have the vocals coming in, you feel like, not necessarily you're in a dream sequence, but you definitely feel like you're in space. And I don't mean outer space, I mean in this empty space where you look around and all you see is yourself. Kind of has that feeling of not having any boundaries, but somewhat being bounded by an invisible line or an invisible bubble that holds you on the inside. That's kind of how this song feels, sounds, and comes across. The vibe of the track never really changes from that, regardless of the changes in the momentum that the song has. It has a great chorus, super bright, I should say, vocally and musically. and then adding some heaviness to the guitars on that chorus sets it apart of how low the verses come in. This is a song that has a more linear, steady movement as far as the verses are concerned, and then it adds volume, brightness, and in this case also heaviness when it gets into the chorus. It's a track that has pop, heavy, spacey synths working all around, bringing everything together, a heavy 80s influence all around as well, but that touch of heaviness that this song offers, specifically from the guitars in that chorus, it's so nice. It brings metal into the picture, and it makes the song feel a lot more complete. Last but definitely not least, Listen, another very bright sounding song, and this one I feel like it's a little bit more consistently bright, and that brightness comes from the synths once again, but even the drums and guitars influence, even though they have a little bit of a heavy, harder rock vibe to them, it just makes the sound more textured. It doesn't take away from the brightness that the synthesizers infuse the track. It has emphasis on the heavier sound at times, but also in the more, there's some melodic stretches here. But overall, it really emphasizes the heavier side of the band in a more consistent way from start to finish. There are moments of brightness, there are moments of light, but overall, when you look at this song from start to finish, it does hold that consistent heaviness a little bit closer together, and that gives the song an overall feel of heaviness as well. The vocals match the brighter side, but it also merge well with the heavier side. They don't change depending on where you are. They connected with one portion of the song, and then they stay connected with that portion, allowing to create a riff between everything else and them. This also helps to create depth. I really enjoy this song from that point of view, and it has a great solo to boot. This is it, Voyager with Fearless in Love, out July 14th on Season of Mist. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.